Hello, I'm Kimberly Warren. We're about ready to start our Solution Summit. We're signing everybody in. We'll try to start at, let's see, 7:30. We just have 5 minutes till the top of the hour. Go and do a live stream and tell your friends to come on in. This is our 6th week on racial reconciliation, and today it's race, religion, and reconciliation. We're going to talk about white Jesuses, stained glass windows, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So please tune in, weigh in, and put your questions on our live stream here. LD Data Solutions and Leameana is going to be watching for your live comments. So, all right, we have people signing on today. I'm letting them in the room. We have about 4 minutes to go. Hi, hello, how are you? Everybody's connecting right now. Hi, we are live streaming. We're just getting set up right now, Pastor Mason. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you need a passcode to get in? I'm wondering if anybody else needed it.
No, I'm in.
Okay, good deal. Okay, we have people signing in. We just have about 4 minutes to go.
Okay.
We're gonna start on time. We may have some other people join us in just a little bit.
Okay.
Pastor McDonald, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us. We are just getting started. We have about 4 minutes to go. I have your bio here. I forgot to ask Pastor Mason, but Pastor Mason, how long have you been pastoring? Like a long time. I think I asked you earlier.
Yeah, 30 some years.
Yeah. Wonderful. So we're just waiting for a few more. Jimmy is coming on the show in just a little bit. He surprised me. He's been trying to get in like Pastor McDonald for about.
Yes.
It's just a busy season now that everybody can find us on Zoom. Leameana, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Fantastic. We're just about ready. We're at the top of the hour here, getting ready to start the Solution Summit. We're going to ask you all to go in and share the page. And we're going to also ask you to do a watch party. So when you share, you have an option of doing a watch party. That means everybody can see you and they can see what you're watching, and they can also wave, they can also put their comments in there, and Leameana Davis with Data Solutions, LD Data Solutions, will give you some
Are you talking about through my Facebook?
Yes. So if you're on Facebook, you just share this live stream, and then it'll say, do you want to start a watch party? Yeah. So
I go, oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Mid-City Excellence?
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome, awesome.
Hi, Pastor McDonald.
How are you, Pastor Mason?
I'm fine, Grady. Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
We didn't get to finish our upward, did we?
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Okay, yeah, I see it. I got you.
Hey, awesome. We have about 2 minutes to go, everybody. If you're just now joining us on Facebook, we are so excited.
How are you, Pastor Mason?
Sorry. Go.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
Good.
Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, David and Mary.
Oh, hello.
Bob. Good to see you, everybody. Kimberly.
Hey.
So Leameana, I also sent you the password. People should not need it. I think most people are getting in without it, but just in case somebody does, I'm going to switch to my headset in about a minute for our Solution Summit this evening. I'm so excited.
How do you do that?
Okay, I'm going to turn this down.
Excuse me.
Where you at, Mike?
I am at 1209 Midiat in my house.
Oh, cool. Good.
Although there's almost nothing in here. Everything is either in Lincoln or here in storage. So
Yeah.
getting ready for the big move.
Yes, you are. Are you a Husker fan?
No.
Don't tell that to people up there.
I know, believe me. What's worse is Lori is an OU grad, so we're big Sooner fans.
Ah,
boy.
oh my
Well,
goodness.
Big 8 days.
They play the game at the shopping mall on Sunday afternoons there. I mean, I'm telling
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. I've been in dress shops and they stop and I mean it's on the loudspeaker and
That's
everybody's
right. Right.
it's a serious deal.
It is.
It is.
Okay, there we go.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yes.
Kimberly's now. One moment.
Hey, Jimmy.
Dude.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Is
Is there an echo?
There is.
There is.
Okay. How's that? That's perfect.
Good.
That's
Oh my
perfect.
gosh, we're starting on time. So everybody out there in Facebook land and however you're watching today, welcome to the wonderful Solution Summit, where we talk about topics that make our world a better place. And you know, I was doing a devotion and it just kind of hit me. We're asking for world peace, and some of us don't have peace within our own being. And so we have some wonderful people here tonight that's going to help me a little bit with that. We're being challenged in our faith every day, and also how we're going to fight. If we're going to fight the good fight of faith, or we're going to just come out swinging with our dukes up. So if you haven't been to the Solution Summit before, this is our 6th week. And we have had some wonderful guests just talk about how we can give peace a chance. All I'm saying, give peace a chance. So anyway, we'll have Brendan Birch following us or logging on, and he's going to kind of represent the millennials or the now or next generation. Bob, you can help me a little bit more. Are we in the now or the next generation? I don't know what it is.
I can't keep up either. I forgot what generation I was.
Okay, you're supposed to be the guru here, but anyway, tonight is we have over 4,000 viewers after 6 weeks, and I just think it's because we have some special geniuses on the show. No pressure, and also just because people want to ask the hard questions and they don't want to be judged for saying the wrong thing. You know, I had a meeting with an executive today, and she says, "Can I say Black or is it African American?" You know, I have retrained myself, and some of you have too, just so we're not offensive, and I think we won't get it right. You know, I have a good friend, he's white, his wife is Korean, and so I always try to say Asian people, and then we're eating dinner, and he's like, the Orientals, and I was like, oh, Orientals, can we say that? He was like, I'm married to one and she's never slapped me or anything. So, oh my gosh. Sometimes we don't know what to say. And I think this is an opportunity for us. We don't have all the solutions, but we're just going to try to piece this together and talk through it, because I think there's a few hundred or 1,000 people out there that may have some of the same questions. If you're watching the City Excellence page, you can also just stream this on your page, share it, and start a watch party. So you just click share and start a party. And so then other people can see it. And then if you have questions, if you're into the watch party, Leameana Davis, LD Data Solutions, is going to be entertaining those questions. So, and then she'll be texting me, emailing me, and helping me moderate the show as co-producer now. I keep giving her more titles. And she will help me just make sure we get your questions out there and Facebook land added in. So I'm going to introduce our panelists and some may have to leave early and some may come a little late, but this is our 6th Solution Summit. And it's the first night without St. Joe PD Chief Connolly, and I want to thank him for being with us. But the topic is a little bit more on religion this time, and he was like, I am not an expert on that, but I will watch and I'll listen in. So we thank him for taking the tough questions about police brutality and, you know, just the mess that we're in across our nation and globe, in treating everybody like human beings. And so thank him for being here. But right now we're going to talk about racial reconciliation. And so welcome to the show, everybody. And it's race, religion, and reconciliation. And so we've probably going to go about an hour. We have a lot of preachers that have a lot of stuff to say and expertise. But we have special guest, Pastor Dave Mason from Green Valley, who has been pastoring over and in ministry over 30 years. And we already did a series last year in 2019 when it wasn't just the hot topic or the trend, just how can we all get along? And so Pastor Mason, welcome to the show. You told me a year or so ago, in a few years, I don't know how much, like 40 or 50% of the world in America is going to be like what we call minority. So do you remember
Right.
that? And how much longer do we have to go to prepare for the takeover?
Yeah, that in 25 years, ethnic will become actually majority, and what is considered majority will actually be minority. But the reason, you know, that was important in regards to, you know, pastoring and taking care of the church. If you're going to reach people, the people that you can reach. So if your demographic actually changes, you know, when I go to Cuba, I don't try to reach Americans. We try to reach Cuba. So that's another part of it. But so, you know, the things that we did together, that was January of 2019. And I had 5 different speakers come, and we just sat and talked. And I reposted those so that people could see them if they'd like to. But it was called Undivided Conversations on Race and Faith. So one of the things I think that that they were actually trying to do was to deal with the fact that Sunday morning is probably one of the most divided mornings of people. I think Martin Luther King said that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so I just decided the best thing I could do was to just sit down with some great influencers and some people who have a better perspective in our community. And so that's what we did. It was very, very beneficial. It turned into a really good time. I enjoyed being with Pastor McDonald and others. And I think that kind of facilitated some of that. Pastor Lewis Monroe invited me to come and do some things. And I got to be with Bill Hedge and, you know, Anthony and Bird. I mean, it just kind of opened up some things. And also I thought it was good content.
Thank you for doing that. I think we learned a lot about each other. And if we don't talk, then we're probably not going to grow together and understand each other. And so when I was talking and Rob were talking, we don't speak for every person of color. We just speaking for our experiences. And that's where we can start. So that was very meaningful to me. We will share that on the Mid-City Excellence page, and I'll also share that on my personal page, just so people can see how we dialogue. And that, you know, I think people always say, why isn't there just one big church? Well, we do have different nuances, different cultures, and different way we worship and different traditions. And I think that's okay too, however we can meet the needs. So we also have, let's see, I'm trying to see who actually, okay, we have former pastor and former political candidate and former police officer Mike Chester, who used to be, you know, when my mother was alive, double daters with my parents, and my dad and him share a birth date, and they have already been best friends for many years. His wife, Lori, has been a mathematician who saved a lot of our Mid-City children from dropping out of school with algebra. So we're indebted to them. And Pastor Chester, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. What capacity are you working in now? I hear St. Joseph only has a few more weeks to keep you here and for you to call this home.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. It's good to see friends here that I've known for a long time. I'm sort of retired, but you don't ever really retire from ministry. And we're off on a new adventure, moving up to Lincoln. And my wife just got a job at Boys Town up there. She was teaching at Missouri Western, and they've had some issues, so she had to do something different. She got a great job at Boys Town, and that's going to be a really good ministry for her while she's teaching math up there. She'll be teaching high school math. And I'm probably just going to be looking for volunteer opportunities there at Boys Town myself.
I'm sure you'll get your feet wet really soon. Thank you for being here. You're going to talk a little bit about us being, repairers of the breach and serving the Prince of Peace and Peace and kind of the high school you grew up in. Next, we have Reverend Dr. Mary McDonald of Holsey Chapel. And we just thank you, Holsey Chapel ICM is located over on 14th. Yes, and if you would take it off mute, I don't know if I need,
there we go.
There we go. Thank you, Leameana. And so she has been serving Jesus since she was 12 years old. She's not a novice at this, and she's not a stranger, definitely at this. So she came under the directorship of Daryl Groves from Christ Rainbow Church, and you all remember him. He also had a formal Bible study and kind of she's paying homage to the people that helped lay her firm foundation. She's been in ministry since 1992 and ordained, and she is also commissioned minister with Grace Covenant Ministries International, where she preaches and teaches. Did you get to make it to Africa this year? Did you go out of the country?
I did not go out of the country this year. My last trip was Peru last year, so.
Wow, just fantastic. So she is a mother of two, Charles and Edward, Aaron, who is a great praise dancer. She graduated at Missouri Western. I don't think I remember that. And she's running an international company. And I don't know, I'll let her share that if she wants to share that. And as one of the only person of color in the boardroom, but she knows how to treat people like human beings and how to speak many different languages culturally. So thank you, Reverend McDonald. Welcome to the show. What do you hope to get out of tonight?
Well, I hope that we can kind of talk together about some of the things that are challenging, and there's something that happens when people share as people. So again, it's just that reminder that we have to be able to communicate. We have to be able to talk about it, whatever the it is, and then we should be able to walk away with a better understanding of each other. So we want to contribute as best we can by way of Holy Spirit in that area.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. And next we have Pastor Jimmy Foster or Pastor James Foster, who is not a novice to ministry, but just new as the senior pastor of Greater Jesus Tabernacle Church. And we've been trying to get him in for a while. He has 3 teenage, 1 almost adult children in his home, and he and his wife Roberta are just doing a phenomenal work on 28th and Mitchell. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Pastor Foster, and tell us how you feel about finally being able to weigh in on hot topics. I know social media does it for many people, but you've had some stuff burning in your heart and have a diverse church. So I saw you baptize that white brother a couple of weeks ago. That was awesome. Sometimes people come to my church and say, we want to come to a Black church. I was like, don't be offended if you see some Puerto Ricans or white, or Hispanic people. So Pastor Jimmy, can you hear us okay?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we have a busy season coming out of COVID, confinement, but not out of the COVID pandemic. So I told my members the other day, I said, well, they said, what if too many come in that we can't handle? I said, well, that's a good thing. So we'll figure that out when it happens. Well, it's happening now. Somebody said revival may happen. It's the revival season. And when you open your doors, pastors, if you have not opened your doors, get ready. Like TD Jakes said, get ready. Because it's, I think it's happening now. And how do we minister in this day and age? I think most people, when you talk to individuals, they are ready, and they're quite ready to break down the lines or the walls of racism. And a lot of them have already had to deal with it. But just as important is what do we do with this virus while we're dealing with a new crisis in America? And real quick, my dad said people would ask him, do you got a black church or do you have a white church? What type of, you got a black church? And he said, no. What color is your church? And he would say, he's quite comical. He would say, red brick is the color of my church. So I thank God that we serve God through our discernment and our spiritual senses, because we see and we recognize through our optical lenses and 2 or 4 eyes, but God sees us and for who we are in our soul and our spirit. So we can't cover up who we are with God. So we should all, it's a long introduction, but I'm Pastor Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for Pastor Foster for being on the show. I really appreciate your input. We're going to go to Pastor Bob Miller, our good friend at Wellspring. And I love their sign because I'm going to try to get it right. When you go to their church, the sign says we start at 10:30-ish. Does it say that? I'm like, those are my kind of people.
What's funny is that's not my personality at all.
That's good.
I'm an on-time person,
on the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you're in the hood now, so you know. No, I'm just joking. So, Pastor Miller, I know you know a lot about the now generation, the next, and you are a runner and you have been over cross-country teams for many years and have affiliation with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so you kind of speak the language of young people. And so I think when a lot of people abandoning the church and making up their own way to find peace and feeling their way through life and have kind of thrown out the baby with the bathwater, you're saying, hey, throw out the bathwater, keep the baby, come on back in, let's have another conversation about my Jesus. So how difficult is that there? In this time, are they, I know I have probably reached more people on Facebook and YouTube than I ever had before. And it was only COVID that pushed me here because I didn't think we were ready. So you probably was already there, right? Have you already met your learning curve?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. That's the different mediums. Obviously, we have to use to connect with this generation. But I think, the thing that never changes is relationships. And I think with the young folks that I run into today, including my own teenage and young adult children, just anxiety, depression, intrusive mental thoughts is just such a huge part of their daily struggle. So finding hope in a world where they're bombarded by constant messages of the worst case scenarios going on in our world is a different reality than what many of us grew up in. And so we have to be able to share Christ in a way that addresses those things that are very much on the forefront of their daily thought process of what does it mean to hope, and think about a future in this world, whereas we were maybe thinking about very different things growing up. I think the questions have just changed a lot, so we've got to figure out what those questions are and make sure that the gospel we're presenting is answering some of those questions in a ways that's satisfying and resonates with their hearts so that they don't go looking for those answers somewhere else.
Right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Pastor Bob, for being here today. We also are just tickled to have, and she may pop in and pop out because she has a couple other things that I see she just popped out, but Waynell Henson is my good friend. She is an attorney, just graduated from law school maybe a year ago. She is also all things Sunday school. So she is a missionary with the Church of God in Christ, 6 million member organization. And I met her several years ago, and she is called the Sunday school girl. And so she loves Sunday school and thinks that should be the foundation of our spiritual development and that we should thrive. And she has over 25,000 people. If you go to that Sunday school girl.com, I believe she'll be back on to talk a little bit about it. But Waynell Henson has 1 foot with the millennials and 1 foot with the mature people, and just a way to grab everybody in and shake them up and make them fall in love with reading the word of God, and he begat her and she begat him and all of that stuff, and makes it come to life. So we'll work her back in the show when she comes. Also, we have I don't know if you're millennial and nexter or now, but we have Brother Brandon Birch, who is pursuing his degree at Missouri Western. He is going to be the next principal, maybe, I don't know. We're gonna not let him go back home to Kansas City after he graduates, but he's a senior at Missouri Western State University right now, and he is also the musician and the organist and all things choir at Faith Family Worship Center. So he is going to, I think, show us his face. Hi, Brother Brandon, how are you doing?
How are you doing?
Good. He's under watch care with us, but he's been to so many different churches, Latino, Black, white, Chinese, just everywhere, all over the world, because he's the maestro. He sings opera, he sings gospel, and he can play in any key with his eyes shut. So he's also listening to the young people as he's still barely 21, I think. He is going to talk about what some churches are doing real well to pull people in, and maybe what some other that can do better, so we don't push the young people away by not responding to some of their needs and some of their techie designs and how they experience life. Brandon, welcome to the show. Are all your friends kind of trying to find Jesus in the trees and the sky and the ocean, and have they abandoned our sanctuaries? I think we might lose him. He'll come back. Brandon, if you can sign back in, just sign back in whenever you can. So we're going to let him come in. I see Pastor Tom is connecting through audio. He's all the way over in Horton, Kansas. He traveled the furthest today. So he has been fighting for human rights for a long time. And, you know, my grandfather was called the Pentecostal Daniel Boone and started 13 churches. And I think Pastor Tom is trying to follow in his footsteps. He has, I don't know, 200, 300 white people in his church, only a few people of color. Kickapoo nations go to his church in Horton, Kansas, Church of the Lord Jesus Christ. He should be writing the book and lecturing us about how can we all get along, how can we merge, how can we have natural relationships of rich and poor and middle class. And so he was in medical school years ago, and I'm so glad he dropped out, because he's saved hundreds of thousands of people and probably have prayed for me in the midnight hour a couple times. So Pastor Tom, welcome to the show. Can you hear us? He's connecting audio, and I don't know, we'll send a smoke signal over there and take a drone over there right to his house, because we got to get his dialogue in. Brandon, welcome back to the show. Unmute your phone. Tell us what the millennials do. Is there any hope for the sanctuary? Or are they just going to do their kumbaya at Curry Park and call it a day?
No, there's definitely hope. You know, I feel like if some, you know, the more mature members will actually give young folks time to grow, you know, to grow in the Lord, to actually take them up under their wing, I think we.
Come back in, come towards the light, come towards the light.
You know, it's just so difficult now, all of a sudden.
Okay, you're good, you're good. You're coming in clear now. Go ahead and take the mic. You know, another thing you can do, you can text Miss Leameana with LD Data Solutions, and she can read your responses for us, but we got to get you back in. I know you'll come back on the show. We're just breaking up. We're breaking up there. But anyway, we'll bring him back in when he can come in. Right now, our first question this morning that kind of struck a nerve with the people and churches around the nation is, we have Shaun King. He is a member of Black Lives Matters. He is not necessarily representing the whole entire organization, but he has a strong dialogue and quite a following of hundreds of thousands of people. And he says that it is time to, as we're tearing down all of these images that are hurtful, that are painful, the General Lee statues, the statues of people that supported slavery, we need to go on in the church house and make them take down any references to white Jesus, because he's not culturally sensitive. He didn't have woolly hair. His skin is too light. We need to also take out our stained glass windows because it is offensive and it doesn't embrace everybody. And so I want to ask the good people that are on the show tonight, if Christians believe we're all created in God's image and from the first family, how did these racial divisions or classifications get started? The racial unrest seems like it just didn't begin in America with slavery and Native America First Nations people. So how do you all think these racial divisions started? Was it just good and evil? Was it, I don't know. It happened way before the Black slavery or African slavery here in our country. So who wants to tackle that? Just somebody jump in. And should we be more culturally sensitive and take out everything that is not culturally sensitive or historically correct, that reflects what we think Jesus looked like? I don't know. We got a mess on our hands. We have a challenge before us, and hopefully we can come up with some solutions. So who wants to jump in with Mr. Brother Shaun King? Uh-oh, did we have a okay, somebody's coming in. Pastor Tom Stone, I see you are in now. He's still trying to connect. Reverend McDonald, how do you feel about that? You have some beautiful stained glass windows in your very beautiful historic Methodist church. What are you going to do about those Marys and Pauls that lack pigmentation?
So our church historically.
Now, he's still trying to connect. Reverend McDonald, how do you feel about that? You have some.
All right, am I good to go, Kim?
You're good to go.
Right.
I'm not sure where my voice came out in the World Wide Web, but go ahead.
Okay. All right, very good. So historically we were Lutheran. Building was a Lutheran, German-speaking Lutheran church. We have beautiful stained glass windows there that are work that I've seen similar work when I visited Europe, been to in Germany. So the image, mankind, we are made in the likeness and image of God. And so for me, we don't want to limit and say God is that he looks like this, or he looks like that, or he only looks like this, or he can only look like that. We are all inclusive in his image as mankind. And so my deal is this, and I'm just gonna keep it real right now. I'm a sinner saved by grace. I needed the blood of Jesus. I didn't care if the blood was black, brown, blue, yellow, green, whatever. I needed red. I needed the red blood to save me, to atone for my sins. And we all know if we use our brains and think in terms of some geography and people, the look of people in a particular area, we know from the area where Jesus was, where he lived and breathed, he may have been a nice little color that would represent some of everybody. And so I'm just saying, sometimes I think we look for an excuse. We look for something to say, no, we need to tear that up. Well, we can't just tear that up. We can't just tear that up. We're not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater, as I think was said earlier. If we go to limit Jesus to being curly haired and dark brown skin, then I've got other brothers and sisters that may say that they can't relate. Now, I don't want to go backwards and say, okay, well, they painted him. Everything we've seen, he's white. Everything we've seen, he has straight hair, that long flowing look, glowing from the movie, the greatest story ever told. We've all seen that, right? But what I am saying here is that Jesus is not limited. So we don't want to limit him to one culture or one look or one ethnicity. Like I said, the blood is red, and I praise God for it.
Fantastic. Anybody else want to jump in? I see Pastor Mason trying to come out the blocks over there. Pastor Mason, you have some Latino people. I've seen a couple biracial people, some African-American, Black people in your church. How do you want people to address it if anything goes on in your church that they don't like? Because a lot of people, we've been talking about conflict resolution for the last 6 weeks. It's not having a conflict that's a problem, it's how we confront it. So what would you like for them to say, besides going to their 4,000 friends on Facebook and say, did you see this man in this blue eyes or whatever? How would you like for it to be approached if someone sees something is not working or is offensive in your church?
Well, we have in our fellowship, we actually have a process of how we handle any kind of issue between each other. So for instance, we have people that do business with each other, and sometimes their agreement doesn't work out right. And so then we have people that actually facilitate conflict resolution to attain peace and to resolve and so on and so forth. So one of the things for us is that we immediately enter into a process. I don't think I've ever had to enter into a process on race. Pastor McDonald has, a historic church, and I have a building, and so I don't have any images around. So there's not an image there, but when I do PowerPoints and so on and so forth, I make sure that I bring up images when I'm using Jesus and biblical characters. I have to be honest to tell you, it's hard to find it, one that is not European, because that's where a lot of the art, I guess, was created and so on. But, as far as the way that we go about resolving things, we talk to each other. We sit down and work one-on-one if there is an actual problem. In my 23 years at Green Valley, I don't know that I've had a straight up issue that's ever taken place in that regard. We have, Latino, yes, Black, mixed marriages, foreign, Samoan. We have a lot of different folks, but I've never had really a significant problem there. But as far as, what Jesus do we show? Well, I try to show all the Jesuses, if you would. I use Black Jesus, and I mean Black, not olive, Black. So, but to me, the best way that we actually go about anything, I don't really see a big problem for us. But the way that we go about things is relationship. And I think Bob said it, that it's all about the relationship and knowing each other and getting to know each other and spending time with each other and talking and so on. But I do think that, like when I did the conversations, there are things that some people don't know. So I will tell you this, we adopted a Black son, and it wasn't anything at all to us really. But my wife suddenly in St. Joe, when she would go to the store or she would go around town, and it was just her and our Black son with her, she had a different experience than she had before. And my son Matthew, when he first started working, he worked at Hy-Vee. This has nothing to do with Hy-Vee, but when he worked at Hy-Vee, he was picking up carts in the parking lot, and somebody started very caustic racial slurs toward him. And it shocked him. It actually made him cry. But he really, had not even really experienced that before. So, I know that it's there. I don't see a lot of it in my actual church, but I know that there's a lot in the community. But the other side of it for me was just wanting to work together. So, when Pastor McDonald or Pastor Monroe or Pastor Bird or, whenever, and even, beyond the African-American church, the Black churches, there's also Hispanic churches. And we worked with the Hispanic churches. I worked together with about 4 or 5 other churches to work with Hispanic. One of the things that happened was really interesting. We invited 7 pastors to come to a luncheon, and they were, personally invited and made to know, but only 2 of them came. And when we asked, where the others were, they were real honest with us and told us that they're afraid. And so that's when I realized there are issues. And I've worked with, Fredes and Aaron and some others. There's about 5 or 6 Hispanic congregations here, but relationship is where I found it. Having coffee together, talking, listening, sharing tasks, and your father preached in my church. Longest sermon we ever had at Green Valley. I preached at his church and came all the way back to my church and sat in the lobby and listened to the last of his sermon. And we had a ball. We had a ball. And your mom told me something that I told Jimmy this the other day, but your mom told me something that was really, really important. Cosetta Foster, wonderful lady. I used to pray with her and your dad and other pastors every week at where Jimmy's now the new pastor. And your mom told me, she said, David, any pond that we test in biology, if that pond is only one organism, it's a very unhealthy environment. And she said, the diversity of the pond is necessary for it to actually bring forth life. And I'll never forget her telling me that. And her and I were talking about the census that had just come out. It's probably the it was probably the 2000 census that we were talking about. But anyway, I just, as far as the way I go about it in my church, I am very cautious to make sure that nobody has a bad experience as much as I possibly can. But I've never seen that exactly straight up, could I say racism, racial judgment in the church, but I definitely see it in the community. And then I actually, because having a Black son, that kind of brought me into the spectrum somewhat, but mostly my wife.
Thank you for sharing that. I remember her always, she was a teacher at heart, talking about how we strengthen the ecosystems. And, if you just have one type of species, you need some algae eaters and bottom feeders, and the stinkiest ponds are probably the healthiest ponds sometimes. And I always say that every church should have a good balance of saints and sinners, those old church mothers that'll pull you to the side and pull that skirt down a little bit, honey. And then those other people be like, we're just glad to be here. You don't know the struggle. Just let me get my big toe in the door today. And so I think it's good to have a good mix racially and also, from different backgrounds. But so I know everybody's trying to be ultra sensitive, and it just seems like our society is so easily offended right now. We do need to address some of these discriminatory things and illegal practices and hiring and where we live and all that. But now we're coming out of the public spaces. Our churches' public spaces, do we have a right to come in like Shaun King, who may or may not even go to your church, and say, you should not have that Jesus up there. You should not have that. That's offensive. I mean, what do you think about that? It is a public place. However, churches have been given some autonomy here, and some people interpret the Bible differently, and there's different cultures within the church. We're talking about, I guess, how do we try to bring different people into our congregations, but also have the uniqueness of how we interpret worship and the word. Brandon, are you back with us? You've been to so many churches all over America, singing and playing and ministering the gospel. What are some churches that you feel the most comfortable in? Is it with all your people in gospel? You also sing opera. What are some of the churches that you feel most comfortable in as a millennial?
I definitely feel more at home with, the white people. I hate to say that,
What now?
But,
come on. No. Say it again. You have the floor.
It's just something about the service. It's a different sense of the spirit is different, and not saying that all, I grew up in a Black church and not all of them are the same, but you actually have a sense of genuine. It's a genuine spirit. Anytime I will go visit a multicultural church, you see what
So you like it when it's multicultural. You feel like there's not such, you feel like you hear God and see God better in that because the congregation is diverse. Is that what you're saying when you say multicultural?
I'm back, Kim. What did you say?
So are you saying, when you said white church and then you said multicultural church? So
well, I get a predominantly, you're predominantly white church.
And do you think that's how you were cultured? Because, I mean, you grew up in Kansas City, but what were your experiences there? And I know you have embraced, music, which tends to, have a strong European background with the opera and all that. Do you think it just kind of embraces who you are as a person, or is it something else that they're doing that makes it work for you? Brandon?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, what makes it work for you? Is it the music? Is it the opera? Is it something else about how you were raised?
Oh, most definitely. I was raised in a household where my mom taught me and my sisters to love everybody, no matter your race or whatever you choose to, we was taught to love everybody. And growing up in the church, the gospel has definitely had an impact on the way I treat people today. Treat, Christ, when we think of the gospel, we think of good news, we're going around to tell the good news of Jesus Christ. And I know the God I serve, I don't see him doing all this hate that I see today. He's following me.
Right. So whatever he is, however you think he is, when he has flesh and blood on, it shouldn't be anything about hate.
Exactly. And like Pastor McDonald said, at the end of the day, we're going to bleed red blood. So, love your brother, love your neighbor as you will love yourself.
Do you see the other young people, your counterparts, your collegians, do you see them getting to school saying, oh my gosh, I got to find a place to worship God? Do you think there's an emptiness, or do you think they're filling it with other things? Darn, Brandon, are the collegians filling their hearts with other things that draw them closer to God, or do you think they've abandoned the sanctuaries, or you think they're still open to that?
Oh, my generation, they're coming to Christ more and more. Each Sunday, I have a friend that just told me they got saved, just by what's going on now, just by the, the racial injustice they see, and that they see that the church is actually welcoming folks, and a lot of people are really been drawn to that now.
That is wonderful to hear. I didn't know if it was the COVID drew them to Christ. That's a sermon right there. Or what? So pastors, Pastor Jimmy, I want to hear a little bit from you. And what do you think that, Pastor, whoever wants to jump in there, Pastor Bob, what is the unifying factor here in crossing racial lines and between pastors, between cultures, and also maybe within the church too, diversifying the body?
Well, I think that it is important for everyone to listen as much as they can in this day and age, to be professional listeners. And I have to put myself at the front of the line for that. But we have to really listen to what people are saying. Some things we think it's the end of the world. It's not really so bad. Some things might look like the world is coming to an end. But if you listen to people, you know, many people, they don't want the world to end like they say they do. You know, that guy, I think, and let's confess, I was reading Facebook today, okay? And all the pastors confessing, I was reading Facebook. There's a lot going on, right? Well, and I discovered that a lot of people have a lot to say on both sides and in the middle, and then there's another dimension going on, 2 or 3. And my point is, I didn't know who. I keep up with the news more than your average 46-year-old, a little bit more. That don't mean I'm as up to date as I should be. But I don't think most of us knew who the Black Lives Matter leader was. And we didn't know the top 2 or 3 names of Black Lives Matter, which it tells me a few things. It tells me that the leader is not as significant to the movement, and the movement is taking on its own thing. And it also tells me that we need to know more about this movement and Tifa, which most of us could not spit out of our mouth if we was having a conversation before a month ago. We knew they existed and we've heard of them. My point is, we need to be good listeners and study what's going on, because there's, and one thing I read more today than I usually do on Facebook, because I wanted to see what's going on. And I found out that a lot of people are working together to make a difference right now. But there's not just the Black Lives Matter movement. There's not just Antifa. There's about 100 different things going on. And I think we have to kind of be still and know that there's God, and at the same time be proactive and take over. I think when a Christian shows up, we show up with authority, and we show up to listen, but we also show up to lead, but we lead with love. And the reason why we need to lead in the areas that we can and that we think God permits is because we can't follow something that's not Jesus centered. Now, I have to admit, I work for corporations that are not Jesus centered. I'm looking at some of you that have done the same thing, but following the movement and being a follower of something that's not Jesus centered leads us down the wrong road. So my point is, when we follow things that people lead and they don't understand, then we don't tend to, and there's no way to lead with love. And Jesus said, do unto others. So me, myself, let me give you a little bit of myself. I'm not in a pulpit right now, so I'm gonna just give you a little raw, okay? Excuse me, but you know, I'm respectful, so don't nobody get scared. But you know, I grew up in an organization that's predominantly Black. There's a lot of whites in our organization. We even had a white bishop years ago. But it's a predominantly Black organization, but I grew up in St. Joe. And we got a lot of white in our family, got a lot of red, a lot of Black. And somebody said we're more white than Black. Don't repeat that. Well, you can look at Kim and see. Anyway,
hey, we're on Facebook now. We're on Facebook.
I'm sorry. My point is, I think before Barack Obama got elected, no one seen a big problem with race. And they said, wow. And he had a pastor called what was his name? Jeremiah Wright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's a polarizing pastor to people that don't know him. Now, let me give you some insight. This is important. When people found out that Jeremiah Wright preached such sermons and mentioned America in a negative light, then they said he's not a real Christian. They said he's not a real patriot. They said he's not this and that. Now I'm going to be honest with you. I've had to look at America from the same position that Jeremiah Wright has growing up. Now, thank God I had a good pastor and a good father and a mother that had to see the greater truth as far as treating people, because it doesn't matter how you look at things. It's if you know who Jesus is, you treat people the way they're supposed to be treated, and you expect the same. And you are led with positivity, not negativity. But my point is, when Jeremiah Wright said what he said, I'm going to be honest, there's 80 to 90% of blacks that said, what's wrong with the sermon? They said, what's wrong with that sermon? And then there's 80 to 90% of whites or more that said, the nerve of him. So what you're seeing now is what black people, now Pastor Mary McDonald, she's a good Christian woman. She would never feel that way. But my point is, we've all felt, I'm teasing you. We've all felt on the inside. I've had to suppress some things. One, because I knew some things wasn't right. And two, I think what's going on now is white America has to look at it from the black point of view. And the white American point of view can be a little too far. And we're finding the black American point of view can be a little bit too far over too. But what you're seeing is that we should not be scared. We should just listen. We're not burning. I don't think America's burning yet, but we should listen, because all we're doing is hearing what some people have felt in their heart. And I've always known that we have to do unto others as people do, as we expect them to do. I always know you have to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay. So no matter how you feel, I think we have to be led by love, and the devil gets in every movement, and then it takes a spin. It takes a spin. And I talked to Pastor David Mason, was it yesterday, for quite some time. And it doesn't matter who I talk to. We all forget we're black and white when we're talking, if you spend enough time with each other. And I'm not, like a preacher said, he said, I'm not going to push my Scrooge on you. He said he doesn't believe in a whole lot of the Christmas celebration because of all the inconsistencies, but he's a pastor of a church and he celebrates with the church. Well, I'm not going to put my Scrooge as far as graven images on you, because I believe some people in their heart, good Catholics, good people, believe that they want to see a visual, and that's all right. But in my opinion, I was always taught that it's better not to have a graven image of anything. And like the pastors have quite eloquently said, I couldn't even hold a pencil to it at all. I'm just learning. But like you all have said, it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter the color. It's just the color of the blood that washes white as snow. But it doesn't matter the color of the skin. Now, the problem I have is that the people leading these movements are willing to act before they are willing to listen. And they're going to tear down people's hearts, and because they had their heart torn down and they haven't trusted and they seek to act. So we have to lead with love, but we have to be proactive and reactive with this thing. Some of these statues are going to come down. Some of the stained glasses are going to come down, but it wasn't these things that saved us anyway, you know. And I pray that people don't upset people's hearts, because some people just have hope and they put their hope in God's resurrection. Amen. And I'm gonna stop there. But Kim, can I ask you, I didn't hear about the stained glass windows. Are you talking about just the stained glass windows that have pictures on them, or just any stained glass window?
Yes, actually, Shaun King was talking about the stained glass windows that have white images or statues with white European, they claim as Jesus should come down. And then there was some more information, all murals and stained glass windows of white Jesus and his European mother and their white friends should all come down. They are a gross form of white supremacy created as tools of oppression, racist propaganda. They should all come down. And so he's saying, I know this is your church and it's not a.
He preached to me. I'll stop talking, but I love what he said the other day. He kept stopping me on several points I was making. I was trying to preach to him, and I'm just teasing. But he said, I just want to see somebody, an advocates of people that protect our speech as a church, and even people that I don't agree with, protect everybody's speech. And when you tear people's things down, you're not protecting their speech. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to talk about some of the Confederate stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that. But
that's a whole nother show, Jimmy, a whole nother show. We got 4 other pastors over here.
You said you want people's speech protected. And when you take down their stained glass windows, that's not protecting their speech. You want your speech protected.
Yeah, and I think he has the right to say what he wants to say, just like, unfortunately, the KKK has it, even though we hate that. But the thing is he is trying to now target the church as having hate speech. And then he says, it's always been this way in the Bible. When the family of Jesus wanted to hide, where did they go? To Egypt, not Denmark, tear them down. And then when he says these are racist propaganda, is white supremacy, which certain forms of free speech is now hate speech. And the pastors will have to decide how we'll respond to that, because we're not talking about, I guess the gauge is going to be, or the plumb line is the church's public spaces that people can come into and say, you cannot teach this way, you cannot preach this way, you cannot have your white Jesus, even if 99% of your church are European or Caucasian from European descendants. You cannot have that, because now it's supporting white supremacies and races and some tools of oppression. Certain forms of your free speech are limited. You can't yell fire. You can't say certain forms, or now they're wanting to bring that under hate crime and white supremacy. So pastors, how do you feel about that? Pastor McDonald, you're a Black church with white Jesus all over your stained glass windows. Are you racist? Are you perpetuating this spirit of oppression and white supremacy because you're not conforming and taking that down?
Okay, so I don't have white Jesus. I do have a depiction of Paul, Apostle Paul, Matthew, Luke, the gospel writers that are on some of the doors, and frankly, their coloring is a bit light, but we're not removing stained glass because of that. Here's the deal, it is about the experience. We want you to have a relationship, and in that relationship, experience Christ. And if we put Jesus in this box to say he only looks like this and he only looks like that, we don't want to limit him. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you go out there and you call the tree Jesus. Nobody lie on me. That is not what I'm saying. Okay, but I go back to Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch that day on the road. The eunuch was not focusing on what Philip looked like, and the truth be told, y'all, I think the Lord appears to us sometimes in ways where we can recognize that it's the Lord. And so, but here's the deal. The good news is when we get to heaven, I don't think we're going to have to ask for directions. We're not going to have to say, I need your bio so I can make sure that it's you, Jesus. And we will have gone through a transformation to a point of where we look like him. And so we can debate all day long about what he looks like, but I'm saying it's not about what he looks like. It's about what he has done for me, glory to God, and what he has done for mankind. And so if we are all made, we agree on this, we are all made in the likeness and image of God. So we have to agree that there's some of me in God, there's some of you in God. And by the way, let's back this thing way up. He formed man out of what? Out of the residue of creation. He formed man out of the dust of the earth, out of the dirt, glory to God. And so I'm thinking that you can find just about any color you want in the dirt. You know what I'm saying? So we got to not be foolish about some things. And yes, I know, I'm very well aware that Christianity in some instances was used to keep and enslave people as justification for keeping African Americans enslaved. There have been, you can go to places, and historically Charleston comes to mind, and stories that can be told. But again, we are fallen. Man is fallen. A man, there's this thing in man, unregenerated man, and some of us still, after we've been renewed in Christ, we still struggle with this, but we try really hard to figure out how we can be superior to somebody else. And so I'd say the root to all of this comes from the fact that we sometimes have to figure out how we can have somebody else be less than us so that we can be better. And that to me is the fallacy of it all. If there is no oppressed people, then the oppressor cannot oppress. And I don't care who you define that oppressor to be. But the reality is there's something in man that says, I need to be superior. I've got to prove myself superior. So slavery didn't just start in America, as has been well said. We can go all the way back to Egypt. The Egyptians were in a conundrum. They said, we can't let them go. We got to have them to build our pyramids and to do the things that are here. And so we can't let them go. So there's a motive for keeping an oppressed people oppressed, and it's a motive that serves the perceived need of the oppressor, and that's just reality. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care what color we want to put around that. So,
wow, that's powerful. I cannot believe we're almost out of our 60 minutes. I need everyone to leave me a thought in regards to how we reconcile this. We're trying to show love to the world. Jimmy says love doesn't always mean we accept every narrative that's out there, that we throw out all of our biblical teachings and standards, but it does not mean hate, but it doesn't mean acceptance of everything. And so as we try to reconcile this thing and move on towards perfection, but we're not going to ever be perfect, and we're flawed. We're trying to help heal hurting hearts. Chief Canali said a few different times, it's not just my job to regulate. I need the schools, I need the hospitals, I need the churches. He sent me an email earlier today and said, we can still come in. If you have Bibles, they will be given to the warden or whoever's over the jail set, and they'll still distribute Bibles after they've searched through them. At some point, they will still give liberties to pastors and clergy to come in and pray. We're kind of coming out of COVID. They're trying to find their bearings now. Mike Chester understands about the chaplaincy and about going in and meeting, being the hands and feet to people who have character flaws. Many of us do. They got caught, So in closing, how do we reconcile or restore this race thing? Because we're family members and we have a breach and we're repairers of the breach. So we're not at odds with the world, but so we also don't lose our uniqueness and let them come in and say, take that picture down, take that down, take that down. I'm going to fine you $500 because you offended me. And I don't, we inherited buildings that were already there. So in closing, if everyone can tell me just one or two strategies that you're going to do as we come back together, and we're still fighting Sister Corona. So that's a whole nother story. But as we come back together and love on each other, what one thing do you think your church needs to focus on to bridge the racial divides and be effective in this season of social unrest and racial disharmony? What one or two things do you think you will focus on or feel led to do as a clergy person?
If I could jump in here, we're followers of Christ, all of us, and the word says, be a doer of the word and not a forgetful hearer. And if we would just simply base our thinking and follow that up with our actions on what the word of God says, the bridges will be built.
Wow. We make it, maybe we're making it too difficult. Follow the word of God and the bridges will be built, not burnt down.
That's right.
Bill, thank you so much, Pastor Mike. And we'll talk to you some more about resuming the prison. And I don't know what's going to happen in the prisons, but the jail ministries. Pastor Bob, one thing that you're committed to that you think is effective and that we need to continue to do to be repairers of the breach and be a bridge?
I think first and foremost is that we have to be curious. We have to really want to know one another, not just to make an argument or, but really truly care. Paul talks about again and again to love one another deeply, and that takes time, and it's got to be an intentional choice to move in a direction of inclusion, and so we can get away from making assumptions about people's hearts. I think definitely as followers of Christ, we're living under a different banner. Our way of operating has to be different. The expectations of Christ for how we operate as the family of God is different than what those conversations might look like in the world. We don't have the luxury of not loving one another, not forgiving one another, not believing the best about one another. We absolutely have to have that as a standard to have conversations. So many of you guys have had so many great things to say just about listening, but I think just that curiosity is so key in really believing the best about one another, that we really want to grow in this conversation. The last thing I'll share with you is a Black pastor friend of mine in Kansas City said that if the white Jesus and the Black Jesus walked into the room, they both have to go. And I thought that was so profound, and kind of piggybacks off of what Pastor McDonald shared tonight, is not putting Jesus in a box. We have to build, I think, our relationships around the commonality of the human experience, that we're all broken, we're all longing, we're all hurting. I always try to remind myself as a pastor, what are the questions people asking when they walk in my doors, the broken and the hurting? They're not asking a lot of the questions that the family of God are arguing about. They're asking a lot of simple questions about, is there someone who loves me? Is there a community I can belong to? Is there hope that my life can change? We got to make sure that we're speaking to those questions as well. So thank you.
Wow, that is profound. Thank you so much. I got like 5 pages of notes from you all. Love one another deeply and include other people. Don't make assumptions about each other. And we don't get that luxury of picking and choosing who fits in and who doesn't. And truly hurting people don't care what the color carpet is. They really don't care about the stained glass windows. Others that are fighting maybe a little bit differently, I don't think they're thinking about repair and healing. They're just like, tear it down right now. We've got to keep this momentum going. We don't want reconciliation. Maybe we're just mad and angry. But I think if they feel our love and see our love, we might be on to something. Pastor Mason, in closing, what do you think is going to be the key as we seek redemption, sometimes for others, ourselves? Does it seem like, to me, it does, that sometimes it's easier to send money over to Haiti that's had a tsunami, or Indonesia, but now it's in our house. We've got some serious issues right here in the good old US of A. God bless America. What do you think you can continue to do to be a part of the reconciliation?
Well, first of all, I really enjoy being with everybody. I love everybody that's on this Zoom. We've all worked together in different ways. I think that's really important. One of the things that I find from my own experience, and again, I don't have the same experience. So like, for instance, I don't know what it's like to be Black in St. Joe. I don't know what it's like to be Black and come to my church. I don't know those kind of things. I don't know what it's like to be Samoan. I don't know what it's like to be, Guatemalan. I just don't know those kind of things. But one of the things I find more than anything else, one, every election cycle, my church gets disheveled. And my people batter each other on Facebook. I've never enjoyed that. I found that really, really painful. You're constantly trying to get them not to do that to each other because they just soundbite each other. They don't really talk and they don't really discuss things. But so one of the things I think more than anything else is that just keeping the stuff from bleeding in. People can bring stuff in, and I don't know that really organically our church, because spirit and truth. So at our church, the way I say it is that, look, nobody's anything here but Jesus is everything, and we don't take ourselves seriously, but we take the Lord very seriously, and the Word of God is the guide, and so try to create that fellowship. But I think stuff gets kind of brought in, so that's one of the things. But participating with this, being with people, being in each other's churches, sharing pulpits as much as something we can do. Kim, we had your dancers come and dance for the upward halftime, and I don't know why I didn't think of that before. But I mean those kinds of things. But I have to say, so I'm not being wordy. I'm going to take away Pastor McDonald's different soils. I've never heard of that. I've never thought of that. So that was cool. I know Bob chose to be where he is. I know Mike's got a lot of experience because he worked in the civil as well as the spiritual and then the political. So he's fought all. Jimmy is lovely and wonderful and does such a great job. And I really appreciated everybody's contribution tonight. And I think this is one of the things that I enjoy and I need is to hear other people's perspective and other ways to be able to do things, because I gain something just by participating tonight. Thank you so much, Kim, for doing this.
Thank you so much for just imparting that to us. I think we're already experiencing less tension between each other. I'm so glad we didn't just become friends right now, because sometimes it's awkward. We would have considered it still, but it helps that we were already having conversations with everybody here. And if you're not a part of the circle, come towards the light, we will all sit down with you, and I think, and have a non-hostile, non-threatening conversation about any scripture in the Bible. We struggle with something, how can we do greater works when I can't even make up the bed for my husband every morning? Oops, I'm confessing right there. How can I have peace in the world when I don't have peace with my second stomach? How can I have peace? I'm looking for balance in my church. And I think once we start here and go out a little bit further, we'll see peace in the world. So Pastor Jimmy, you've been at it for about a year now, but you've been in ministry all your life. And so as a young man that is, the legacy and the mantle has been passed to you and your wife, what do you have to say to the world today as far as being a man of conviction, but also having the love of God?
I'll say, what am I going to start to do? Because you all have already been doing it. So what am I going to begin to do? First of all, I would say that I've learned a whole lot by hearing the same teachings, and by looking at the experiences of the pastors on here. Each and every one of them has spoken life to me at one time or another. And I could say that, at risk of sounding racial, I don't mind putting myself out there. I told my wife last night after talking to David Mason, I said, these white pastors are really qualified. That's what I told her, because I learned so much. And if he was a black pastor in Kansas City, I would have said these Kansas City pastors. So I don't seek to make race the main thing, but when I hear things from somebody that lives in a different neighborhood, that's short, tall, black, white, I appreciate the differences, especially when there's great knowledge that comes out. And Pastor Mike, he practiced so much brevity just now. I need to be more like that. You know, I mean that. So I appreciate it, and I've learned a lot from what you all have said. I'm going to continue and start to learn from the experiences of these pastors. And I mean that because I think you all have taken a calculated approach to ministry and to life. And I could do more of that. I really do. I grew up with ministry, so sometimes I take it for granted because it's just the day, it's the way we do it today, you know. But I'm gonna take from what you guys and your experience and your lifestyle. But one thing I want to say, this is a huge opportunity to teach Jesus, because Pastor Bob and David earlier said Jesus is relevant to people in their area of need and their lifestyle. And he's real to people where they are at. He'll meet you where you're at. So this is a huge opportunity to teach that we don't serve God all the time based upon our feelings and emotions. I've enjoyed talking about, when I was a young man, the black Jesus, the white Jesus, and the olive Jesus, and leaning toward the black Jesus, but not knowing at all, and also looking at an olive Jesus. It's a fun mental thing to do. I like to do those things that make you think. Theologians, great theologians, have taught a black Jesus. Some great theologians have taught an olive Jesus, and some great theologians have taught a somewhat more white Jesus. All great theologians. Those are conversations for our mental capacity. This is a great opportunity to teach the Jesus of our spiritual life. He is spiritual life. It's a great opportunity, and I'm not going to miss this opportunity to understand that people serve God based upon their concept and their perception. Everybody does. But when he starts saving you, and you stop reading about him and what he might have been or looked like, and when he starts saving you and changing you, you forget all about the color. You forget all about how tall he was. You forget all about everything. So we need to illuminate who he is. And if he wasn't spirit, we wouldn't be talking about him. If he wasn't 100% God at the same time, 100% man, we wouldn't be talking about him. So I guess we're going to illuminate God and allow people to see. It's about the kids too, because I'll stop talking in a second, I promise you. But if you look at social media, and if you look at YouTube, this has been brewing, not just past, but in the recent history for the past 10 to 15 years. This has been brewing because everybody has a lot of information. Everybody thinks they know. It's just hitting the media because of the current times. But this has been brewing, and we have to catch the kids when they're young. We have to catch people when they're young in their spiritual walk with Christ, young, and let them know that the main thing is that God is spiritual life. And the intellectual debates and the intellectual conversations are just conversations to have over coffee, maybe. And as a pastor, I can't have those conversations that much anymore. You just asked me to come on tonight. But the spiritual qualities of Jesus is what is to be illuminated, because he's revealed that to us. And this is a great opportunity to talk about the spiritual qualities of Jesus.
I'm gonna have to pull out the organ and back you up, Jimmy. Thank you so much. You and Pastor McDonald talk about the blood that is red. I think we heard that was shed on the cross for all of us sinners. We're all fallen. We're all flawed. And Colossians 1:19 says, "For God was pleased to have all the fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Pastor McDonald, you said some profound things that all of you did tonight. Where should we end up as we, I don't, was it the Beatles? I don't know who it is that says, all I'm just saying is give love, give peace a chance. So tell us, what are your closing thoughts this evening?
I think it's that we've talked about relationship a lot, and it is so important that we find a way, in spite of all the tumult, in spite of all the stuff going on, that we remain relational. We can remain relational by being willing to hear the other person's story. And seek to hear their story more than you seek to tell yours. And I think if we can get there, because that helps us remember, I am speaking to a person who breathes and feels and cries, gets upset and gets disappointed, is happy. I'm talking to a person, and so I can't expect you to understand me if I don't bother to understand you.
Wow, so profound. Just wonderful conversations that we've had this evening on race, religion, and reconciliation. And we appreciate the leadership roles that you all play, not only here, but in Peru and across the nation and the world. And many of you are doing behind the scenes stuff on peace talks. And Pastor Mason, I know, is involved in the WR 360 peacemaker work and bridging people together. So many of you in your daily jobs, you do that. People don't see the behind the scenes work at the hospital. So they don't see the jail cell work and domestic violence work that you do. So thank you so much for your commitment. Did I get everybody a closing 30 seconds? Did everybody get a chance to close? Did I miss anybody? Okay, Brother Brandon's gone this evening. I want to thank him for being here. And Waynell Henson, our attorney, missionary Sunday school girl, we'll bring her back. That Sunday school girl is her website. But Brandon has sung a song in the last year that really touched my heart, an old hymn that says, through tests and trials I've been through, you have been my place of refuge, my shelter from rain, my healer in times of pain. Now I know for myself, you are everything that I need more. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, just give me Jesus. Jesus, please give me Jesus. You can have this whole wide world. Just give me Jesus. So if you want to know anything more about these ministries that are here, we're here to help heal hurting hearts. And we thank you for tuning in to our Solution Summit this evening. God bless you all, and God bless this USA. Have a great evening.